He thought he'd never walk again, but a poor boy does something considered impossible. Rebecca clenched her hands so tightly, her nails dug into her palms as she watched her son sitting alone in the wheelchair. It had been 3 months since Nathan had moved his legs, 3 months since that terrible afternoon at the country club, 3 months of consultations with the best specialists who only repeated the same thing with different words. That's when a barefoot boy, wearing a faded orange t-shirt, approached the chair where Nathan was parked near the empty swings. Rebecca felt her whole body tense, ready to call someone from the park security, but something about the determined way of that child made her wait. "Hi, my name is Jaden," said the boy, crouching in front of Nathan. "I see you here every week. Do you want to play?" Nathan looked at the ground, his cheeks turning red. "I can't. My legs don't work anymore." "I know," Jaden replied with a simplicity that surprised Rebecca. "But I can make you walk again. My grandmother taught me." Rebecca took 3 quick steps toward the boys, her heart racing. What kind of child said something like that? What kind of cruel joke was this? "I'm sorry, but you need to leave," she said, trying to keep her voice firm, but polite. "My son can't—" "Are you his mother?" Jaden interrupted, standing up and looking straight into her eyes. There was something in that look that didn't match the boy's age, a seriousness that made Rebecca stop talking. "I know you must be tired of people promising things, but I'm not promising anything I can't deliver." "How old are you? 6? Rebecca felt her irritation growing. "How can you—" "7, Jaden corrected. "And I've seen my grandmother help many people the doctors had given up on. She was a hospital massage therapist for 20 years before she left there." Nathan had raised his head and was looking at Jaden with an expression Rebecca hadn't seen on her son's face in months. It was hope. That small flame she thought had gone out completely after the last medical appointment. "Mom, let him stay," Nathan asked quietly. "Just for a little while." Rebecca looked around the park. Other mothers chatted in small groups near the benches. Some nannies pushed strollers. Children ran around the playground. Everything so normal, so common, while her world had turned upside down 3 months ago. "All right," she finally gave in, returning to the nearest bench but keeping her eyes on the 2 boys. "But only for 10 minutes. Jaden smiled and crouched back down in front of Nathan. "What happened to you?" he asked. "I fell in the country club pool," Nathan explained, his voice quiet. "I hit my head on the bottom. When I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't move my legs." "But do you feel anything? Does it hurt? Tingly?" "Sometimes it tingles a little, but I can't make my legs move." Jaden nodded as if processing important information. "My grandmother says when we get hurt like that, it's like the paths the brain uses to talk to the legs get confused. Like when a tree falls on the road and we need to find another way to get through." Nathan blinked, surprised. "Is that how it works?" "That's what my grandmother explains. She says our bodies are very smart and can find new paths if we help them the right way." Rebecca clenched her hands even tighter. That boy was giving her son hope with explanations that were too simple, almost childish. But at the same time, none of the doctors had managed to explain the situation in a way Nathan truly understood. They all talked about spinal injuries, guarded prognoses, realistic expectations. "Do you live around here?" Nathan asked. Jaden pointed across the avenue, where a neighborhood with much simpler houses began. "Over there. I come here sometimes because there's more space to play soccer." "You play soccer?" Nathan's eyes lit up. "I used to play every day before this." "Then you'll play again," Jaden said with such certainty that even Rebecca felt a tightening in her chest. "But you have to do the exercises my grandma teaches every day. You can't give up." "I won't give up," Nathan promised, and for the first time in 3 months, his voice sounded firm. Rebecca watched the 2 boys talking for a few more minutes. Jaden told stories about his neighborhood, about how he helped his grandma make the herb mixtures she used in massages, about how he'd seen people with similar problems get better. Nathan listened to every word with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at some jokes Jaden made. When it was time to leave, Nathan didn't want to leave the park. "Mum, can he come over tomorrow?" he asked, while Rebecca pushed the wheelchair toward the car. "Please." "Nathan, honey," she began, but looked back and saw Jayden still standing in the same spot, waving. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "But he knows how to help me. I felt it. He's different from the doctors." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the bedroom ceiling while Michael, her husband, snored softly beside her. How could she let a 7-year-old boy create false hopes in her son? But at the same time, how could she take away that spark that had returned to Nathan's eyes? The next day, Michael left early for a meeting at the company. He owned a construction company that was growing fast, always busy with new projects, important contracts. Since the accident, he had become even more distant, burying himself in work as if that could make reality disappear. Rebecca was giving Nathan breakfast when the doorbell rang. Dorothy, the housekeeper who had worked with them for 5 years, went to answer it. Rebecca heard voices coming from the door. "Miss, I need to speak with the lady of the house." It was a child's voice. "Look, we're not receiving visitors," Dorothy replied, trying to be kind but firm. "It's about the boy in the wheelchair. I promised I'd come back." Rebecca felt Nathan perk up beside her. "Mum, it's Jayden. You said he could come." "I didn't promise anything, son. But you didn't say he couldn't." Rebecca sighed and went to the door. Jayden was there, barefoot like the day before, wearing the same orange t-shirt, but now carrying a worn cloth bag. "Good morning, Mom," he greeted politely. "I brought the things to start the exercises with Nathan." "Listen, Jayden," Rebecca tried to be delicate. "It's very kind of you to want to help, but my son is being treated by specialist doctors. We can't just—" "Have you asked those doctors if they think he'll walk again?" Jayden interrupted her. "Really, have you asked?" Rebecca was speechless. Of course she had asked, dozens of times. And the answers always came with words like unlikely, rare. We need to be realistic. "Mom, let him in," Nathan shouted from the kitchen. "Please." That's how Jayden entered the Thompson house for the first time. Rebecca led him to the living room, where Nathan was already waiting in his wheelchair, practically vibrating with anticipation. "First, we need to see how your legs are doing," Jayden explained seriously, taking some small jars and little bottles with liquids from his bag. "My grandma sent these mixtures. She makes them with herbs that help improve circulation." "Wait a moment," Rebecca raised her hand. "You're not putting anything on my son without me knowing exactly what it is." Jayden nodded, not seeming offended. "Of course, Mom, this one is rosemary oil with arnica. It helps warm the skin and improve blood circulation. This other one has calendula and chamomile to relax the muscles. And this one has mint for when you do the movement exercises." Rebecca picked up one of the jars and smelled it. It had a strong but not unpleasant aroma. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. "Your grandmother makes all of this, T1?" she asked. "She does. She learned from her grandmother, who learned from her grandmother. My family has always worked this way, helping people when they're sick." "And why doesn't your grandmother work at the hospital anymore?" Jayden's face turned serious. "Because the bosses there didn't like her using these methods. They said it wasn't scientific. But she healed many people they couldn't heal. Then they got angry and made her leave." There was more to this story, Rebecca could tell. But the truth was, she was tired. Tired of doctors who promised little and delivered even less. Tired of seeing her son wasting away in his chair, losing his joy for life. Tired of feeling like she was failing as a mother because she couldn't do anything to help him. "All right," she finally agreed, "but I'm going to stay here and watch everything." Jayden started with gentle movements, applying the oil to Nathan's legs while explaining each step of what he was doing. His small hands worked with surprising precision, pressing specific points, making circular motions, gently stretching the muscles. "Are you feeling anything?" he asked from time to time. "It's warm," Nathan answered, "and more tingly than before." "That's good. It means it's working." Rebecca watched everything carefully. There didn't seem to be anything dangerous in what Jayden was doing. In fact, it even resembled some of the therapies Nathan had already done, just adapted for a child's small hands. After 20 minutes, Jayden put everything away in his bag. That's enough for today. Tomorrow we'll do it again, and I'll teach some new exercises. You're coming back tomorrow? Nathan asked hopefully. I'll come back every day if your mother allows it. My grandmother said it needs to be every day to work well. Rebecca walked Jayden to the door. How much does your grandmother charge for this treatment? She asked quietly, so Nathan wouldn't hear. Jayden looked at her confused. Charge? We don't charge anything, ma'am. My grandmother says that when we use the gift God gave us to help others, we can't charge. Otherwise it stops being help and becomes business. But the materials, the herbs, that must cost money. We grow some things in the backyard. The others I buy with the money I earn, helping at the farmer's market on weekends. Rebecca felt something tighten in her chest. That boy used his own money to buy materials to help her son. Listen, Jayden, I can't accept you spending your money like that. Let me give you something to at least cover the costs. You don't need to, ma'am, really. I'm happy to be able to help Nathan. He seems like a nice boy, and so began a routine that would change everything. Every day, promptly at 3 in the afternoon, Jayden would appear at the Thompsons' door. Sometimes he came straight from school, with his backpack on and his feet still dirty from the path. Other times he came after helping with some odd jobs in the neighborhood, tired but always with a smile on his face. Dorothy at first looked at him with suspicion. She didn't say anything, but Rebecca noticed how she always stayed nearby during the sessions, as if she needed to keep watch. Gradually, however, even she began to soften. That boy has a good way about him, she commented one day while making juice in the kitchen. I've never seen such a polite and dedicated child. The sessions kept evolving. Jayden brought new exercises, always explaining what he was doing and why. He taught Nathan to try to imagine the movements in his legs, saying the brain needed to remember how to do that. My grandmother says we have to think of our legs like they're babies learning to walk again, he explained. There's no use rushing. It has to be slow, one little step at a time. During the sessions, Jayden also told stories. He talked about the school he attended, much simpler than the private school where Nathan studied. He told about playing with his friends in the neighborhood, about days helping at the farmer's market, about his grandmother who raised him alone since he was little. Where are your parents? Nathan asked one day. My mother left when I was very little, Jayden replied without seeming sad. I never met my father, but my grandmother is both mother and father. She's the best person in the world. Nathan looked at his own mother, who was sitting in a nearby armchair pretending to read a magazine. My mother is nice too, he said. And my father too. But he's always working. It was true. Michael barely showed up at home in recent weeks. When he did, he stayed in the office until late, left early in the morning. Rebecca tried not to think too much about it, tried to believe it was just a busy phase at work. But deep down, she knew her husband was running away from the situation, running away from having to face their son's reality. One night, 2 weeks after Jayden started coming, Michael came home early. Rebecca was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard him come in through the garage. Hi, honey, she greeted, trying to sound natural. You're early today. Meeting got cancelled, he replied, taking off his jacket and loosening his tie. Where's Nathan? In his room, doing homework. Michael got a glass of water and stood still, looking out the window at the lit garden. Dorothy mentioned there's a boy coming here every day, he finally said. Some new friend of Nathan's. Rebecca took a deep breath. She knew this conversation would come sooner or later. It's a boy who's helping with an alternative treatment for Nathan's legs. Michael turned slowly. An alternative treatment? What kind of treatment? Massages, exercises. His grandmother worked for many years as a masseuse, and he learned some techniques. Wait. Michael put the glass in the sink harder than necessary. You're letting a child treat our son. Based on what? On a masseuse's hunches. They're not hunches, Michael. I researched. Many of the techniques he uses are similar to regular physical therapy. Similar isn't the same as being correct. His voice rose. Rebecca, we have the best doctors, the best specialists taking care of Nathan. How can you risk his health with... Risk? It was Rebecca's turn to raise her voice. Risk would be what? Letting him waste away in that chair while your wonderful doctors do nothing but say there's no hope? They didn't say there's no hope. They said we need to be realistic about the fact that our son will probably never walk again. Is that what you want me to be realistic about? The silence that fell between them was heavy, laden with months of unspoken frustration and pain. I just want to protect Nathan, Michael finally said, his voice lower. And you. I don't want this boy, however well-intentioned he may be, to create false hopes. What if they're not false? Rebecca asked. What if there really is a chance? Then let it be done by professionals, real doctors with diplomas, with proven experience. The doctors with diplomas have already given up on our son, Michael. This boy hasn't given up. Michael rubbed his face, tired. I want to meet this boy, and I want to talk to his grandmother too. If we're going to continue with this, I need to be sure we're not making any mistakes. Okay, Rebecca agreed. But promise you'll give it a chance. That you'll really listen to what they have to say. I promise. The next day, when Jaden arrived for the daily session, Michael was waiting in the room. The boy stopped at the door when he saw a man in a suit looking at him with a serious expression. Good afternoon, sir, Jaden greeted politely. You must be Nathan's father. I am, and you must be Jaden. Yes, sir. Michael studied the boy for a few seconds. Bare feet, simple but clean clothes, a worn bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't seem to be a scammer or have ulterior motives. He seemed to be exactly what he was, a child trying to help another. My wife told me about the treatment you're doing with my son, Michael said. I'd like to know more about it. Of course, sir, I can show you. During the next hour, while Jaden worked with Nathan, Michael watched every movement, every technique, asking detailed questions. The boy answered patiently, explaining the logic behind each exercise, showing the points his grandmother had taught him. And have you seen this work before? Michael asked. Yes, sir. There was a man in our neighborhood who had a bad leg after a blood problem. The doctors said he wouldn't walk properly again. My grandmother treated him for 6 months. Today he walks without limping, works normally. And why isn't your grandmother doing this treatment herself? Jaden hesitated for the first time. She can't work officially anymore, sir. She lost her papers. Why? Because she used methods that the hospital bosses didn't approve of, but she healed people anyway. Then they got angry and removed her from there. Michael exchanged a look with Rebecca. There was more to this story, obviously. But the fact was that he was seeing with his own eyes that the treatment didn't seem to be doing any harm to Nathan. And more importantly, he was seeing something he hadn't seen in months. His son smiling, engaged, willing to try. All right, he said when the session ended. You can keep coming, but I want to meet your grandmother too. Can you ask her to come here one of these days? Yes, sir, I'll talk to her today. 2 days later, Mrs. Wilmer showed up at the Thompsons' house. She was a woman of just over 60, greying hair tied in a bun, simple but impeccably clean clothes. She had the large, strong hands of someone who had worked all her life, but her eyes were kind and attentive. Good afternoon, she greeted, when Rebecca opened the door. My grandson asked me to come talk with you. Please, come in. Rebecca led her to the room where Michael was already waiting. Mrs. Wilmer sat with an upright posture, her hands resting in her lap, waiting. Michael started with direct questions about her experience, about the techniques she used, about the cases she had treated. The woman answered everything calmly and honestly. She told about the 20 years working in a large hospital in Chicago, about how she learned traditional therapeutic massage techniques but always felt something was missing. That was when she started studying older methods, knowledge passed down from generation to generation in her family. The doctors said I was mixing superstition with medicine, she explained, but I saw the results. Patients they said wouldn't get better were improving. People who had lost hope were getting their lives back. And why were you fired? Michael asked. Mrs. Wilmer sighed. Because I contradicted an important doctor. There was a patient with terrible chronic pain. Nothing they did helped. I started treating her with my techniques and she improved a lot. The doctor in charge of her got furious, said I was interfering with the official treatment. They took me to a meeting and gave me an ultimatum. Either I stopped with the alternative methods or they would take away my license. And you didn't stop, Rebecca finished. I couldn't stop. The patient depended on me, but they followed through on the threat. They took my license for unauthorized practices. Michael stayed silent for a moment. And do you think you can help my son? Mrs. Wilmer looked directly into his eyes. Sir, I never promise things I can't deliver. Your boy's case is complicated. The injury he had affected the communication between the brain and the legs. But from the symptoms Jayden told me about, it seems it wasn't a complete injury. He still feels tingling, which means some connection still exists. The doctors say the chances of recovery are minimal. The doctors are looking at numbers and statistics. I look at the person, and what I know is that the human body is much more capable of healing than we imagine when it gets the right stimuli and has the will to get better. But you can't guarantee anything, Michael insisted. No, I can't. But I can guarantee that I'll give it my all. And I can guarantee that I won't do anything that harms the boy. It was Rebecca who spoke first. How much do you charge for this treatment? I don't charge anything, ma'am. My grandson has already been treating the boy. If you allow me, I can supervise his work, teach more advanced techniques as needed, but I don't want money. That's not right, Michael said. Your time, your knowledge, they're worth money. They are, yes, but there are things that are more important than money. My grandson came back home different after he started coming here. Happier, with a purpose. That's priceless. Michael and Rebecca exchanged another look. There was a sincerity in that woman that was impossible to ignore. All right, Michael finally agreed. But I want you to know that if at any point we feel this is harming Nathan, we'll stop immediately. Of course, sir. I wouldn't expect any less from his parents. With Mrs. Wilmer's approval, the treatment intensified. She came once a week to evaluate the progress and teach new techniques to Jayden. On the other days, the boy kept coming alone, always punctual, always dedicated. 3 weeks after the treatment started, something happened. Nathan was lying on the living room couch while Jayden applied the oils on his legs and did the passive movement exercises. Suddenly, the boy let out a shout. Ouch! Rebecca jumped up from the chair where she was. What is it? Did it hurt? No. Nathan's eyes were wide open. I felt it. When Jayden pressed here, I felt it. Jayden and Rebecca froze for a second. Feel it again, Jayden asked, pressing the same spot on Nathan's right calf. I felt it. It hurts. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes filling with tears. It was the first time in 3 months that Nathan had felt pain in his legs, and for the first time in 3 months, she was happy that her son was feeling pain. This is very good, Jayden said with a huge smile. It means the pathways are starting to connect again. That night, when Michael got home, Rebecca barely let him in before telling him the news. The man stayed quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Are you sure he's not imagining it? He asked finally. Sometimes kids... Michael, I saw his reaction. It wasn't imagination. He felt real pain. So, it's working? It seems so. Michael went to Nathan's room where the boy was already lying down ready to sleep. Hey, champ, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your mum told me about today. Dad, I felt my leg. Nathan said excitedly. Jayden said it's because I'm getting better. Michael swallowed hard, trying to control his emotions. That's great, son, really great. Do you think I'll be able to walk again? It was the question Michael had avoided answering honestly for 3 months, the question that terrified him because he didn't want to give false hope, but he also didn't want to take all hope away from his son. I think you're doing everything right, he finally said, and that Jayden and his grandmother are helping you a lot. The rest, we'll have to wait and see. It wasn't the answer Nathan wanted, but it was the most honest one Michael could give. The following days brought more small progress. Nathan began to feel more parts of his legs. He could identify when Jayden touched different points. The tingling became more frequent and intense, but with progress also came unwanted attention. One of the neighbors, Mrs. Peterson, a woman of nearly 70 who lived next door and always had an opinion about everything, started asking questions. Rebecca, this boy who keeps coming here every day, she said one day when the two met on the sidewalk. Who is he exactly? A friend of Nathan's, Rebecca answered, trying to keep her tone casual. But he's not from our neighborhood, right? I've never seen him before. No, he lives across the avenue. Mrs. Peterson made that face she always made when she was about to give an unsolicited opinion. Look, I don't want to meddle, but you need to be careful. That kind of person sometimes has ulterior motives. They see a nice house, a family with money. Mrs. Peterson, Rebecca interrupted her, feeling her irritation grow. Jaden is a 7-year-old child. He's helping my son. There are no ulterior motives. I'm just warning you, dear, it's always better to be safe than sorry. That conversation kept going through Rebecca's head for the rest of the day. Not because she believed the neighbor's insinuations, but because she knew other people in the neighborhood probably thought the same thing. A poor boy coming every day to a rich family's house. People always assumed the worst. In the next session, she watched Jaden with extra attention, but all she saw was a dedicated boy, focused on helping his friend, never asking for anything, never even looking at the expensive things in the house with envy. Jaden, she called when the session ended, can I ask you a question? Of course, Mrs. Rebecca. Why are you doing this? Coming here every day, spending your time and your money on materials? Jaden thought for a moment before answering. When I was little, really little, I also couldn't walk for a while. It wasn't the same as Nathan, it was different. But I remember being in bed, not being able to play, seeing everyone running and me stuck. And I remember there was a boy in the neighborhood who came to visit me every day. He would tell stories, make me laugh. And that helped me more than any medicine. Rebecca didn't know this story. Jaden had never mentioned it. And that boy, are you still friends? No. He moved away. But I never forgot what he did for me, how he made me feel less alone. So when I saw Nathan in that wheelchair alone in the park, I thought maybe I could do for him what that boy did for me. But then I could also do more, because my grandmother taught me her techniques. Rebecca felt her eyes well up. How had she doubted even for a second that child's intentions? You're a very special boy, Jaden. I'm not, Mrs. Rebecca. I'm just trying to help a friend. But not everything was good news. A few days later, Nathan had a bad day. The tingling that had started to appear suddenly stopped. He couldn't feel anything when Jaden did the exercises. Why isn't it working today? Nathan asked, the frustration clear in his voice. Sometimes it's like that, Jaden explained. My grandmother says recovery isn't a straight line that only goes up. There are days when it feels like everything's gone backward. But it hasn't. It's just the body resting before getting better again. But what if it doesn't get better? What if that day was just luck and now it's over? It wasn't luck, it was your body healing, and it will keep healing if you don't give up. But it was hard not to give up on bad days. Nathan would get moody, irritable, sometimes crying from frustration. Rebecca didn't know what to do in those moments. She tried to comfort her son, but the words seemed empty. It was Michael who suggested something different. What if we let Nathan go visit Jaden's neighborhood? He said one evening. Meet his grandmother, see where he lives, maybe it'll distract him a bit. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Rebecca hesitated. What if the wheelchair can't get through the streets there? We'll take him in the car, of course. He doesn't need to go in the wheelchair. The following weekend, they took Nathan to Jaden's neighborhood. The contrast was shocking. The streets were narrow and uneven, the houses small and simple, many with asbestos roofs and unfinished walls. But there was something about that place that the wide, clean streets of their neighborhood didn't have. There was life. Children ran through the streets, playing soccer, playing tag. Residents chatted on the sidewalks, sitting in plastic chairs. Music was playing from some houses, the smell of food being prepared. It's here. Jaden pointed to a small house painted light blue. It had a little rusty iron gate and a tiny but well-kept garden in front. Mrs. Wilmer welcomed them with a broad smile. What a joy to have you here. Please come in. The house was simple but incredibly clean and organized. The living room had a worn-out sofa, but covered with a colorful crocheted blanket, a bookshelf with books and photos, a ceiling fan that spun slowly. It smelled of fresh coffee and something sweet baking in the oven. I hope you like cornbread, Mrs. Wilmer said, going to the kitchen. I just took it out of the oven. Nathan looked around with curiosity. It was so different from his house, but at the same time, it was cozy in a way his house wasn't. "Do you like it here?" Jayden asked, sitting next to his friend on the sofa. "It's nice, very different from my house. It's smaller, right? But it's good. It's ours." Mrs. Wilmer returned with a tray of cornbread and coffee for the adults. They talked for over an hour, Mrs. Wilmer telling stories about the neighborhood, the neighbors, the times when she worked at the hospital. "Life here isn't easy," she said at one point, "but we manage. And there's a lot of good too. People help each other, care about each other. When someone is going through a hard time, everyone comes together to help." Michael listened to that attentively. In his neighborhood, people barely greeted each other, everyone in their own houses, in their cars with closed windows, in their private lives. When they were leaving, Nathan held Jayden's hand. "Are you coming again tomorrow?" "I am. Every day, remember. And you won't give up on me." Jayden looked into his friend's eyes seriously. "Never. We're in this together, until the end." The visit did Nathan good. The following week he was more cheerful, more willing to do the exercises, even on days when he felt nothing. And slowly, gradually, the progress started to show again. First, it was just the sensitivity returning more intensely. Then, one day, while Jayden was doing the movement exercises, Nathan shouted again, "Wait! Do it again!" "What?" "Bend my leg again!" Jayden took Nathan's foot and bent his leg at the knee, pushing slowly. "I felt it." Nathan was almost crying. "It wasn't just the touch, I felt my leg bending." Rebecca, who was in the kitchen, came running into the living room. "What happened?" "Mum, I felt my leg moving." Jayden had a huge smile on his face. "This means the muscles are waking up. Now we need to try to make them move on their own." In the following weeks, this became the focus. Jayden taught Nathan to try to contract his muscles, to imagine his legs moving, to make an effort even when nothing happened. "It's like learning to walk again," he explained. "You need to teach the brain to send the right messages again." They were frustrating days. Nathan tried so hard to make his legs move that he ended up exhausted and crying. But Jayden was always there, encouraging, explaining that it was normal for it to be difficult, that all progress took time. And then, almost 2 months after the treatment began, it happened. Nathan was lying on the couch, focused, trying to make his big toe move. Rebecca was in the room too, as always, watching. "Focus on the big toe," Jayden instructed. "Imagine it moving upward. Think only about that, about sending the message from the brain to the big toe." Nathan had his eyes closed, his face red with concentration. And then, so slightly that it was almost unnoticeable, his right big toe moved. Just a little, just a barely perceptible tremor. But it moved. Rebecca's eyes widened. "Nathan," she called with a trembling voice, "do it again." "Do what?" "Your big toe. It moved." "What?" Nathan opened his eyes, incredulous. "I saw it. It moved." "Try again," Jayden asked, his voice full of contained emotion. "Focus on the big toe again." Nathan closed his eyes again, concentrated, and this time both Rebecca and Jayden saw it clearly. The big toe moved, lifting slightly and going back down. "I did it!" Nathan shouted. "I made my leg move!" Rebecca began to cry. They weren't tears of sadness like the ones she had cried over the past months. They were tears of hope, of relief, of pure joy. Jayden had such a big smile that it seemed like his face couldn't contain it. "You did it. I knew you could." The two boys hugged, laughing and crying at the same time. When Michael got home that night, before he even took off his jacket, Nathan shouted from the living room, "Dad, come see, quick!" Michael entered the living room and saw his son in the wheelchair with a radiant expression. "What is it?" "Look!" Nathan concentrated and, with great effort, managed to move his big toe. "I did it myself." Michael stood still, processing what he was seeing. Then he approached, knelt in front of his son, and looked at his foot. "Do it again." Nathan repeated the movement. Michael covered his face with his hands for a moment. When he removed them, his eyes were red. "My son, you're coming back." "I am, Dad." Jayden was right. Michael looked at the boy who was standing in the doorway of the living room. watching the scene with a discreet smile. "Jaden, come here," he called. The boy approached, a bit hesitant. "Thank you so much," Michael said, extending his hand. "Thank you so much for not giving up on my son." Jaden shook his hand, his small one disappearing in the businessman's large hand. "No need to thank me, sir. It's Nathan who's doing all the hard work." That was the turning point. From then on, the progress became faster and more consistent. Nathan managed to move his other toes, then his whole foot, then he began to move his leg at the ankle. Mrs. Wilmer intensified her visits, coming 3 times a week to evaluate and teach new exercises. Michael, who had been skeptical before, was now fully involved. He came home earlier to attend the sessions, asked questions, learned the exercises, so he could help Nathan on weekends. But with Nathan's evident improvement also came external pressure. The physical therapist who was officially handling the case, Dr. Sarah, heard about the progress and asked to evaluate it personally. "I want to understand what's happening here," she said when she came to the house. The tests didn't show any indication that there would be such a quick recovery. Mrs. Wilmer and Jaden demonstrated the techniques they had been using. Dr. Sarah watched everything carefully, sometimes asking to repeat certain movements, taking notes. "This is interesting," she admitted at the end. "Some of these techniques are really effective. I use variations of them myself with some patients, but there are others I've never seen before." "They're old techniques," Mrs. Wilmer explained, "passed down through generations in my family. I learned from my grandmother, who learned from her grandmother." "And they work," Dr. Sarah added, looking at Nathan. "Obviously, they work, but I'd like to better understand the theory behind them." The 2 women spent the next hour talking, exchanging knowledge. Dr. Sarah explained the science behind some movements. Mrs. Wilmer shared practical experiences from decades of work. "You know," Dr. Sarah said at the end, "we should combine our approaches. I'll continue with traditional physical therapy a few times a week, and you continue with the work you're doing. I think together we can accelerate Nathan's recovery even further." It was the first time someone from traditional medicine had recognized the value of Mrs. Wilmer's work. The woman had to turn her face to hide the tears that welled in her eyes. With the combined treatment, Nathan began to make even more impressive progress. Within a few more weeks, he could move both legs with some control, bend his knees, stretch his feet. But something was still missing. He could move his legs when lying down or sitting, but he couldn't support his own weight standing. "It's normal," Dr. Sarah explained. "The muscles became very weak during these months without use. He'll need to strengthen them gradually before he can support himself on his legs." They then began more intense exercises. First, Nathan would hang from parallel bars with Jaden and Michael holding his legs, just to get his body used to the vertical position. Then, with support, he tried to put a little weight on his legs. The first attempts were painful. Nathan cried from frustration because his legs would tremble and give way immediately. But gradually, very slowly, they began to bear more weight, for longer periods. "You're doing really well," Jaden would always say during moments of discouragement. "Remember what I told you. It's like learning to walk again. You didn't learn to walk overnight when you were a baby. It won't be different now." 3.5 months after starting treatment, the impossible happened. Nathan was at the parallel bars, with Jaden on one side and Michael on the other when he asked them to let go. "No, son," Michael hesitated. "You're not ready yet." "Please, Dad, just for a second. I want to try." Michael looked at Jaden, who just nodded. Slowly both released their hold on Nathan's arms, staying very close in case he fell. Nathan was standing, supported by the bars, trembling, with weak and unsteady legs. But he was standing, supporting his own weight. "I'm standing," he exclaimed, laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm really standing." Rebecca was filming everything with her phone, her hands shaking so much the footage came out all shaky. Dorothy was at the living room door wiping tears with her apron. Even Michael, always so controlled, had shining eyes. Nathan managed to stand for almost 10 seconds before his legs began to give way. Michael caught him before he fell, hugging his son tightly. "You did it, my son. You did it." That night was a celebration at the Thompson house. Rebecca made a special dinner, and insisted that Jayden and Mrs. Wilmer stay. It was the first time they had eaten together as an expanded family, sharing not only food, but joy and hope. "Mrs. Wilmer," Michael said at one point in the evening, "I know you've always refused, but please let me do something for you. You and Jayden gave us our son back." "Mr. Michael," she replied gently, "the greatest reward my grandson and I can have is seeing that boy smiling and getting better. That's worth more than any money in the world. But you spend on materials, on your time. And we gain a new family. Look at those two." She pointed to Nathan and Jayden, who were talking animatedly in a corner of the room. "They're no longer just patient and therapist. They're brothers at heart. That's priceless." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. But not everyone was happy with Nathan's progress. Mrs. Peterson, the nosy neighbor, began making more direct comments when she saw Rebecca. "So it's true that poor boy managed to make your son better?" she asked one day. "Yes, it's true," Rebecca replied with pride. "How interesting. And the doctors, what do they think of all this?" "They're surprised and happy with the progress. But it must be strange, right? Specialists with years of study couldn't do anything, and a child with no training can." Rebecca understood where the woman was going. "Mrs. Peterson, if you're implying something, you'd better speak up." "I'm not implying anything, dear. I just find it curious. And I worry about you. There are so many ill-intentioned people in the world, people who take advantage of others' vulnerability. Jayden isn't taking advantage of anything. He's helping my son. For now. But have you stopped to think about what they'll ask for later, when your son is completely dependent on them?" "Enough!" Rebecca felt the anger explode. "You know nothing about Jayden or his grandmother. They're good, honest people who are helping without asking for anything in return. If you can't understand that, that's your problem, not theirs." And she turned her back, entering the house and slamming the door hard. That conversation left her shaken for the rest of the day, not because she believed Mrs. Peterson's words, but because she knew others in the neighborhood probably thought the same. What if they started spreading rumors? What if they tried to cause trouble for Jayden and Mrs. Wilmer? In the next session, she talked about this with Mrs. Wilmer. "Don't worry about these things, dear," the older woman said calmly. "Gossipy people will always find something to talk about. What matters is that we know the truth. And the truth is that we're helping Nathan because we want to, because it's the right thing to do. But what if they try to cause trouble? What if they call some authority, some agency to investigate? Then let them investigate. We have nothing to hide. I'm not practicing medicine without a license. I'm just teaching massage techniques to my grandson, and he's helping a friend. There's nothing illegal about that." Mrs. Wilmer was right, of course, but still Rebecca was worried. The worry proved justified a few weeks later. An inspector from the health department appeared at the house door with an anonymous complaint that alternative medicine was being practiced without a license on the premises. "Ma'am, I need to verify what's happening here," the man said when Rebecca answered the door. "Of course, but I don't understand. Nothing irregular is happening here. I received a complaint that a person without a medical license is treating a child with unconventional methods." Rebecca felt her blood boil. Mrs. Peterson. It had to be her. "Please come in," she said, keeping her voice calm. "I'll explain exactly what's happening here." She led the inspector to the room where Jayden was just having his daily session with Nathan. She explained about the accident, about how the doctors had said recovery was unlikely, about how Jayden showed up offering help. "And who is this child?" the inspector asked. "My name is Jayden, sir," the boy answered politely. "I'm Nathan's friend." "And you're treating him?" "No, sir, I'm not treating. I learned some massages from my grandmother and I'm doing them on my friend to help. Like when we give someone a massage who has back pain. It's not medical treatment." "And does your grandmother have a license to teach these techniques?" "She was a massage therapist for 20 years, sir. She doesn't work officially anymore, but she still knows how to do things." The inspector took several notes, asked to see the materials Jayden used, questioned about methods and frequency. Look, Michael, who had arrived during the visit, joined the conversation. My son is being followed by specialist doctors. Dr. Sarah, the physical therapist responsible for his case, is aware of everything Jayden does and even approves. Would you like her contact to confirm? Yes, please. Michael called Dr. Sarah right then, putting her on speakerphone. The doctor confirmed everything, explained that the methods used weren't harmful and that they were actually complementing the traditional treatment well. So there's no problem in continuing? The inspector asked. No problem at all. In fact, I wish more professionals had the openness that Mrs. Wilmer has to share knowledge and work together. The inspector seemed satisfied with the answers. He made a few more notes and prepared to leave. Sorry for the trouble, he said, but understand that we need to investigate all the complaints we receive. Of course, we understand perfectly, Rebecca answered. May I ask who made the complaint? The complaints are anonymous, ma'am, but between us, he lowered his voice, they usually come from neighbors who have nothing better to do than meddle in other people's lives. When he left, Rebecca felt like marching over to Mrs. Peterson's house and giving her a piece of her mind. But Michael held her back. Let it go. She'll only be happy if you pay attention to it. But she tried to cause problems for Jayden and Mrs. Wilmer, and she didn't succeed. The inspector saw there's nothing wrong here. Forget about it and let's focus on what matters, which is Nathan's recovery. Michael was right. But still, Rebecca kept an eye on Mrs. Peterson in the following days, ready to defend her new extended family from any other attacks. Meanwhile, Nathan kept improving. He could stand for longer and longer periods, started taking short steps with support. It was a slow and painful process, with good days and bad days, but the progress was undeniable. One day, 4 months after the treatment began, Nathan was at the parallel bars when he asked Jayden to step back a little. What are you going to do? Jayden asked. You'll see. With great effort and concentration, Nathan let go of one hand from the bar. He stayed balanced for a few seconds, holding on with just one hand. Then, very slowly, he let go of the other hand too. He was standing alone, without support, for 3 whole seconds before starting to lose his balance, and Jayden ran to catch him. I stood by myself, Nathan shouted, without holding on to anything. You did. Jayden was jumping with joy. You really did. Rebecca came running into the room when she heard the shouts. What happened? Did someone get hurt? No one got hurt, Mom. I stood by myself. What do you mean by yourself? Without holding on to the bars, just standing by myself. Rebecca had to sit down because her legs went weak. Your son, who hadn't moved a single toe in 4 months, was standing on his own. Show her, Jayden encouraged. Nathan returned to the starting position holding the bars. He took a deep breath, found his balance and let go of his hands. This time he stood for almost 5 seconds. My God, Rebecca whispered. My God, my son. That night, she called everyone she knew, her parents, her siblings, her friends, telling them that Nathan had stood on his own, that he was starting to walk again, that the impossible was happening. And in every call, she talked about Jayden, about the boy who didn't give up, who believed when no one else did, who brought hope when there was only despair. But Nathan's progress also brought an unexpected change. He started becoming more independent, less focused on the sessions with Jayden, not because he didn't like his friend anymore, but because he was starting to do other things, to have other interests. Mom, the boys from school want me to come back to classes, he said one day. They said there's an elevator there, and the wheelchair fits through the hallways. Can I go back? Rebecca and Michael talked at length about it. Nathan's school had offered private tutors at home since the accident, but returning to school would be an important step. What about the sessions with Jayden? Rebecca asked. Will you still have time? I can do them after school, right? Jayden comes at the usual time, and I'll already be home. But you'll be tired from classes. I don't mind being tired, Mom. I want to do both. Nathan returned to school the following week. It was different, of course. He was still in his wheelchair most of the time, although he could already walk short distances with support. The other children were curious at first, asking questions, wanting to see him stand. But gradually the novelty wore off, and Nathan became just another student again, and that was exactly what he needed. Jayden kept coming every day, But now the sessions were shorter because Nathan was tired from school. Even so, they maintained the routine, kept up the exercises. "Sometimes I think," Nathan said during one session, "about what would have happened if you hadn't come to talk to me that day in the park." "You would have gotten better another way," Jaden replied. "You're strong and don't give up easily. But you were the one who made me believe it was possible. All the doctors said it wasn't. You were the only one who said yes." "It wasn't just me. Your mother believed. Your father believed. Dr. Sarah believed. Lots of people believed. But you were the first. That's what matters." It was a beautiful friendship to witness. Two boys from such different worlds, brought together by unexpected circumstances, forming a bond that went far beyond therapist and patient. 5 months after the treatment began, Mrs. Wilmer had a serious talk with Rebecca and Michael. "I think it's time to start spacing out the sessions," she said. "Why?" Rebecca felt a tightness in her chest. "He's not walking completely yet." "No, but he's very close. And part of the recovery now is letting him try on his own. If we keep doing everything for him, he won't fully develop the strength and confidence he needs." "But Jaden will still come, right?" Michael asked. "Even if it's not every day?" "Of course. He and Nathan are friends. But the visits need to start being more about friendship than treatment." It was hard to accept, but it made sense. Nathan needed to start walking on his own 2 feet, literally. They reduced the sessions to 3 times a week, then to 2. On days when Jaden didn't come for treatment, he came just to hang out. They played video games, watched movies, talked about school and life, and Nathan kept improving. He could walk increasingly longer distances with support. He could stand for longer periods. He could get in and out of the chair by himself. 6 months after the accident, the impossible happened. Nathan was in the living room with Jaden, both playing video games, when he decided to get up to get a glass of water. Without thinking too much, without calling anyone for help, he simply stood up from the chair. He took 3 wobbly but firm steps to the table, picked up the glass, and took 3 steps back. It was only when he sat down again that he realized what he had just done, and it was only when he looked at Jaden, whose eyes were wide open, that it really sank in. "I walked," he whispered, "by myself. I walked by myself." "You walked," Jaden confirmed, a huge smile on his face. "You really walked." And then they both started shouting at the same time, calling Rebecca, calling Dorothy, shouting that it had happened, that he had walked. Rebecca came running from the kitchen, thinking someone had gotten hurt. When they saw her expression, the boys were laughing and crying at the same time. "I walked, Mom, by myself, without help." "What do you mean by yourself?" "Show her," Jaden asked. Nathan took a deep breath, focused, and stood up. Slowly but surely, he took 5 steps toward his mother. She opened her arms and he practically threw himself into them, the 2 of them staying hugged for long minutes as they cried. "My son," she repeated non-stop. "My son is walking. My son is walking again." When Michael got home that night, he found the whole family in the living room. Rebecca, Nathan, Dorothy, Jaden, and even Mrs. Wilmer, whom Rebecca had insisted come immediately. "What's going on?" he asked, confused by so many people. "Dad," Nathan called, getting up from the chair. "Look!" And he walked. He crossed the entire room 10 full steps until he reached his father. Michael caught him in his arms, lifting his son off the ground and spinning with him around the room. "You did it," he said, his voice choked. "My son, you did it." That night was a celebration. Rebecca ordered pizza for everyone, put music on, and for the first time in 6 months, the Thompson house was truly happy. "Mrs. Wilmer," Michael called the woman to a corner, "I know you've always refused a reward, but I can't let this pass. You and Jaden gave us our son back. Please, let me do something." "Mr. Michael, I've already said—" "I know what you've already said, but think about it. Jaden is a brilliant child, dedicated, intelligent, with a real gift for what you taught him. He deserves the best opportunities. Let me pay for a good school for him, a school where he can develop all the potential he has." Mrs. Wilmer hesitated. "Sir, it's not a favor, it's not a reward, it's an investment in a child who can make a big difference in the world if given the right opportunities, and I would like to help give him those opportunities." Mrs. Wilmer looked at her grandson, who was laughing with Nathan, the two boys jumping and playing as if they were old friends. If you put it that way, as an investment in the future, maybe I can accept. Then it's decided. On Monday, I'll start researching the best schools in the area. And not just school, anything Jaden needs, materials, books, courses, whatever is necessary for him to develop. Thank you, Mr. Michael. From the heart. But there's one condition. What? You don't stop there. Use this success to help other people, other children who might need help and have nowhere to go. Michael nodded slowly. I promise. And so, what began as a tragedy turned into something beautiful. Nathan not only walked again but gained a brother in spirit. Jaden not only helped a friend, but gained opportunities he never imagined having. And two families from completely different worlds came together in a way that would change all their lives forever. In the following months, Nathan continued to improve. He went back to playing ball, slowly at first, then with increasing skill. He started running again, jumping, doing everything he used to do before the accident. Jaden started at a new school, one of the best in the area. At first he was scared because it was so different from what he was used to, but his intelligence and dedication soon made him stand out. The teachers began commenting that he had a special talent for science and biology. When I grow up, he said one day during a visit to the Thompson house, I want to study medicine, so I can really help people with a degree and everything, but without forgetting what my grandmother taught me. I want to combine both things. You're going to be an amazing doctor, Nathan said, because you won't be one of those who only looks at papers and tests. You'll look at the real person, just like my grandmother used to do, just like your grandmother did. The friendship between the two boys only grew over time. They spent weekends together, did homework together, played ball together. They were inseparable. Rebecca and Mrs. Wilmer also formed a strong bond. The older woman taught traditional recipes, told family stories, shared knowledge about herbs and medicinal plants. Rebecca, in turn, helped with practical matters, gave advice about school, about dealing with bureaucracy. Even Michael changed. He spent less time at work, more present at home. He realized he had almost missed important moments in his son's life by always being focused on the company. He wasn't going to make that mistake again. 1 year after the accident, they threw a party. It wasn't anyone's birthday. It wasn't a holiday. It was simply a celebration of life, recovery, friendship. Do you remember, Nathan said at one point during the party, when I thought I'd never walk again? When I spent all day in that chair, looking at my legs without feeling anything? I remember, Jaden answered. And I remember you not wanting to do the exercises because they hurt and you were tired, and you wouldn't let me give up, not for 1 day. Because I knew you could do it. You just needed to believe it too. Nathan smiled. Thank you for everything. For not giving up on me when everyone else did. The others didn't give up. They just didn't know there was another way. But now they know. It was true. Nathan's story had spread. Other doctors began seeking out Mrs. Wilmer, wanting to learn her techniques, wanting to understand how to combine traditional knowledge with modern medicine. The woman never got her official license back, but she gained something better, the respect of professionals who had previously rejected her. And more importantly, she gained the opportunity to teach, to pass on knowledge that had been preserved for generations. You know, she told Rebecca one day, I spent a long time angry about losing my license. I felt they had taken away my identity, my ability to help. But now I see that it was necessary. If I were still working at the hospital, trapped in rules and protocols, maybe I wouldn't have been here when Jaden and Nathan needed me. Maybe I wouldn't have had time to teach my grandson. Sometimes we need to lose something to gain something much greater. Rebecca understood exactly what she meant. Nathan's accident had been terrible, but it had brought amazing people into their lives. It had taught valuable lessons about humility, about not judging people by appearances, about being open to help from unexpected places. Sometimes I think, she shared, about what would have happened if I had sent Jaden away that first day, if I had listened to my prejudices and hadn't given him a chance. But you did give it, Mrs. Wilmer said softly. At the moment that mattered, you chose to believe. That's what makes you a good mother. Not protecting your child from everything, but knowing when to let him open up to new possibilities. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, life went on its natural course. The boys grew up, their friendship strengthened. Nathan became a normal kid again, with all the normal challenges of a child. But there was something in him now that wasn't there before, a resilience, a depth. He knew what it was to lose something important and fight to get it back. He knew the real value of persistence, hope, true friendship. And Jaden, who was already mature for his age, gained even more confidence. He realized he could make a difference in the world, that the knowledge he inherited from his grandmother wasn't just superstition or old stuff. It was real, it was valid, and it could change lives. 2 years after the accident, Nathan participated in the school's annual race. It was just a simple little race, nothing competitive, but for him it meant everything. It meant he had fully come back, that he was like everyone else, that the accident was just a distant memory. Jaden was at the finish line waiting, with a camera in his hand filming everything. When Nathan crossed the line, the two hugged tightly. "We did it," Nathan said. "You did it," Jaden corrected. "I just helped." "We did it. Together." And that was the truth. Alone, neither of them would have achieved what they did. But together, supporting each other, they had made the impossible happen. Michael and Rebecca watched the scene from afar, holding hands. Beside them, Mrs. Wilmer also watched with a proud smile on her face. "They're going to stay together forever, aren't they?" Rebecca asked. "They will," Mrs. Wilmer replied with certainty. "What they built here isn't just friendship, it's brotherhood, it's family, and real family is never lost." The years passed. Nathan and Jaden grew up, each following their own path but always connected. When Jaden graduated from school with honors and won a full scholarship to a prestigious university, it was Nathan who was in the front row at the graduation cheering for him. "Remember when you told me you were going to be a doctor?" Nathan asked after the ceremony. "I do. Why?" "Now you can. You're going to study real medicine with all the resources you deserve." Jaden looked at his friend, his brother, and smiled. "And you? What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but whatever I do, I want it to be something that helps others, like you did for me. You already help others just by being who you are. You don't need to do anything special. But I want to. I want to make a difference like you all did in my life." And so, the story that began with tragedy and despair ended with hope and purpose. Two boys from different worlds, united by impossible circumstances, changing not only their own lives but the lives of everyone around them. When Jaden entered medical school, he had a clear mission: to combine scientific knowledge with the traditional techniques his grandmother had passed down to him, to show the world that it didn't have to be one or the other, that it could be both working together. And Nathan, who had experienced the power of this combination firsthand, became his biggest supporter. He helped spread the message, told his story to anyone who would listen, encouraged other doctors and health professionals to be more open to different methods. Mrs. Wilmer, who was almost 70 years old, finally began to receive the recognition she deserved. She was invited to give lectures at hospitals, to teach her techniques in extension courses, to share her knowledge with a new generation of therapists. "It took time," she once told Rebecca, "but they're finally understanding. That medicine isn't about blindly following rules. It's about caring for people, using all available knowledge, traditional or modern, to help them get better." Michael, who had promised to use the success of Nathan's treatment to help others, kept his word. He created a foundation that funded alternative treatments for families who couldn't afford them, that connected traditional therapists with modern doctors, that supported research on integrative health methods. "I wanted this name to have a special meaning," he explained when they registered the foundation, "a name that would remind us where it all began." "And what name did you choose?" Rebecca asked. "Two Worlds Foundation, because it was the union of two different worlds that saved our son, the world of traditional knowledge and the world of modern science, the world of the rich and the world of the poor. And it showed that when we unite these worlds instead of separating them, amazing things can happen. It was perfect. It was exactly what had happened. The foundation grew quickly. Within a few years, it was helping hundreds of families, funding dozens of therapists, supporting several important research projects. And at the heart of it all was the story of two boys who refused to accept that the impossible was truly impossible. On a special day, 5 years after the accident, they held a big celebration. They gathered all the families who had been helped by the foundation, all the therapists who had been trained in Mrs. Wilmer's techniques, all the doctors who had learned to combine traditional methods with modern science. It was a beautiful event, full of stories of overcoming gratitude and hope. And at the center of it all were Nathan and Jaden, now teenagers, but still with that special bond that had formed when they were just two children trying to make the impossible happen. "When I look at all this," Nathan said during his speech, "I remember that day in the park, when I was alone in the wheelchair thinking my life was over. And then appeared a barefoot boy wearing a worn-out orange t-shirt who looked at me and said, 'I can make you walk again.' And I believed him. Not because there was any proof that he could, not because there was any guarantee, but because he believed first. And sometimes that's what we need, someone who believes when we can't believe by ourselves." The audience applauded, many with tears in their eyes. "Today," Nathan continued, "I don't just walk. I run. I play ball. I do everything I did before. And I do more because I learned lessons I would never have learned if I hadn't gone through that experience. I learned about humility, about not judging people by their appearance, about being open to help from unexpected places. And I learned that the greatest strength that exists isn't physical strength. It's the strength of human connection, of true friendship, of love that asks for nothing in return." When it was Jaden's turn to speak, he was visibly nervous. He had never liked public speaking, but he had important things to say. "When I was little," he began, "my grandmother always told me that every person is born with a purpose, and that our job in life is to discover what that purpose is and fulfill it. I spent a long time searching for my purpose. I thought it was being a doctor, helping sick people, but now I know it goes beyond that. My purpose is to build bridges. Bridges between different worlds, between different knowledge, between different people. To show that we don't have to choose between tradition and science, between old and new, we can have both. You can take the best from each and create something even stronger." He looked at Mrs. Wilmer, who was seated in the front row. "My grandmother taught me everything about the power of traditional medicine, about knowledge passed down from generation to generation. But she also taught me to respect science, to seek to understand how things work, to not be afraid of questions and to always keep learning. And it was this combination that made the difference for Nathan. It wasn't just the massage. It wasn't just the physical therapy. It was everything together, working in harmony." The audience applauded again. "So my request for you today," Jaden concluded, "is that you also be bridges, be people who unite instead of divide, who embrace the different instead of rejecting it, who believe in the impossible instead of accepting what they say is inevitable. Because if Nathan had accepted what the doctors said was inevitable, he would still be in that wheelchair. But he didn't accept it. And today he is here, standing, strong, healthy, proving that sometimes the impossible is just a matter of finding the right path." The event was a huge success. It generated media coverage, interest from other organizations, partnership offers, and funding. The Two Worlds Foundation was on its way to becoming a national reference in integrative treatments. But for Nathan and Jaden, the most important thing wasn't the numbers or the recognition. It was knowing that they were making a difference in people's lives, that other children wouldn't have to go through the despair that Nathan went through, that other families would have hope when it seemed there was none left. More years passed. Jaden graduated from medical school with honors, specializing in neurology and rehabilitation. But he never abandoned his grandmother's techniques, always incorporating them into his work, always seeking that perfect balance between science and tradition. Nathan chose a different but equally important path. He studied business administration and dedicated himself to expanding the foundation, ensuring that more and more people had access to the treatments that had saved his life. He worked side by side with his father, learning about business and management, but always keeping the focus on the original purpose, helping people. Mrs. Wilmer continued working until very late in life, even when her fingers began to stiffen with age, even when her back ached after long sessions. She kept teaching, kept sharing, kept making a difference. "I can't stop," she would say when someone suggested she retire for good. "As long as I can help even one person, I will continue. That's what I'm here for." Rebecca and Michael also changed a lot over the years. The couple who used to live in separate worlds, him at work and her at home, learned the true importance of being present, of cherishing every moment, of not taking anything for granted. "We almost lost our son," Michael once said years later, "and in the process of almost losing him, I almost lost my wife too. I almost lost myself. But that experience taught me that no matter how much money I have, how many projects I build, how many successes I achieve, at the end of the day, what matters is this," and he pointed to Nathan and Jaden, who were playing ball in the garden. "It's having the people we love nearby. It's making a difference in these people's lives. It's building something that lasts beyond us." And that's exactly what they built. Not just a foundation or an organization, but a legacy of hope, of persistence, of unity. When Nathan turned 18, he made sure the party was in the park where it all began. There, in that same place where he had been sitting in a wheelchair years before, feeling lost and hopeless, he was now surrounded by friends and family, strong and healthy. "It was here," he said during the party, pointing to a specific bench, "that everything changed. I was sitting there watching the other children play when Jaden appeared, barefoot, wearing that orange t-shirt I'll never forget, and said the words that changed my life. 'I can make you walk again.'" Jaden stood beside him, now a young adult, but with the same determined look he had as a child. "I wasn't sure if I could do it," Jaden admitted, "but I knew I had to try, because if I didn't try, it definitely wouldn't work. But if I tried, at least there was a chance." "And what a chance," Nathan laughed. "Look where we are now. You entering medical school, me running the foundation, hundreds of people being helped, all because you had the courage to try when no one else was trying." "And you had the courage to believe," Jaden added. "It wasn't just me, it was both of us. It's always been both of us." The friends and family present watched the exchange with emotion. It was impossible to be there and not be moved by the story of those two. It was impossible not to feel hope seeing how much they had grown, how much they had achieved, how much more they would still achieve. Mrs. Wilmer, now over 75 years old but still vibrant and active, watched everything with a satisfied smile. Her grandson had become everything she had ever dreamed he would be. A good man, dedicated, with a clear purpose in life, and more importantly, a man who never forgot where he came from, who honored his roots even while reaching for new horizons. "You're proud of him, aren't you?" Rebecca asked, sitting beside the older woman. "Very proud, but I'm also proud of Nathan. He could have become bitter about what happened. He could have grown angry at the world, but he chose to use the experience to grow, to become better, to help others. That says a lot about who he is, and it says a lot about how you raised him." "We almost lost him," Rebecca confessed, her voice growing quiet. "Not just physically, but emotionally. He was withering away in that wheelchair, losing his will to live. And we didn't know what to do, until Jaden appeared." "It was fate," Mrs. Wilmer said softly. "I don't usually talk much about these things because I know people might think it's nonsense, but I believe some things happen for a reason, that some people come into our lives exactly when we need them, and that's what happened with Jaden and Nathan." Rebecca nodded, completely agreeing. The party continued late into the night. There was music, dancing, food, laughter. It was a celebration not just of Nathan's birthday, but of everything that had been achieved, of all the barriers that had been broken, of all the impossibles that had become possible. And at the center of it all, the two friends, the two brothers, United by an experience that could have destroyed but ended up building. United by a friendship that began with a barefoot boy making an impossible promise and a boy in a wheelchair having enough courage to believe. When the night was ending, Nathan and Jayden were alone in the park for a few minutes. They sat on the same bench where Nathan used to sit in his wheelchair, looking at the stars. "Do you ever stop to think," Nathan said, "about how things would be if none of this had happened? If I hadn't fallen in the pool?" "Sometimes," Jayden admitted. "But then I remember that if it hadn't happened, maybe we never would have met. Maybe the foundation would never have been created. Maybe hundreds of people wouldn't have been helped. Do you think it was worth it? All the suffering, all the pain?" Jayden thought for a long moment before answering. "I don't know if I can say it was worth it, because the suffering was real and it was terrible, but I can say that something good came out of it, that you transformed tragedy into purpose, and that's amazing." "We transformed it," Nathan corrected. "Together." "Together," Jayden agreed, smiling. The years kept passing. Jayden became a renowned doctor, known for his innovative approach that combined traditional medicine with alternative techniques. He published articles, gave lectures, trained other professionals. But he never charged outrageous amounts for his consultations, never forgot that he came from a poor neighborhood where people didn't have money to spare. Nathan expanded the foundation to other states, helping thousands of people access treatments they otherwise couldn't afford. He married young, had children, and always made sure they grew up knowing the story of how their father had almost lost the ability to walk, and how a special friend had changed everything. Mrs. Wilmer lived to 85, working and teaching until her last weeks. When she finally passed, surrounded by family and friends, she left an immense legacy. Not in money or material possessions, but in shared knowledge, in lives touched, in difference made. At the funeral, Jayden and Nathan carried the casket side by side. And afterward, when everyone had left, they stayed alone in the cemetery, remembering the extraordinary woman who had been the bridge between their two worlds. "She taught me everything," Jayden said, his voice choked. "Not just about massage or herbs, but about compassion, about dedication, about never giving up on people. She saved my life," Nathan added. "Through you, through her teachings. If it weren't for her, I'd still be in that chair. Or worse. She would be proud of everything we've built." She was proud. I saw it in her eyes. In the last weeks when I visited, she always talked about you, about how you were making a difference, about how you were honoring her knowledge in the best way possible. Jayden wiped the tears from his face. "I just hope I can continue to live up to her legacy." "You will. We will. Together." And that's what they did. In the years that followed, the foundation kept growing. It opened clinics in several cities, trained hundreds of therapists, helped thousands of families, and always maintained the original spirit, the union between different worlds, different knowledges, different people. Jayden opened his own clinic, but unlike other medical clinics, his had a special room. A room decorated with old photos of Mrs. Wilmer, with medicinal plants growing in pots, with traditional massage tools displayed on the walls. It was a constant tribute to the woman who had started it all. And in a special corner of that room, there was a framed picture. It wasn't a photo, but a drawing made by Nathan when he was 8 years old. A simple drawing of two children, one standing and the other sitting in a wheelchair, holding hands. Underneath was written in a child's handwriting, "My friend Jayden who helped me walk again." That drawing was worth more than any diploma, any award, any recognition, because it represented the essence of everything Jayden believed, that medicine wasn't about ego or status. It was about human connection. It was about being present when someone needed you. It was about not giving up even when everything seemed impossible. When Jayden turned 30, he threw a party in the park. The same park where everything had started more than 2 decades before. Nathan organized everything as a surprise, gathering everyone who had been part of their journey. "You're getting old," Nathan joked when Jayden arrived and saw the party. "We're getting old," Jayden corrected. "But look at everything we've done. Look at all the people here. Each one of them represents a life that was touched, a family that was helped, a hope that was renewed." All because a barefoot boy had the courage to talk to a stranger in a park. And because that stranger had the courage to believe. They looked around, seeing the hundreds of people present. Families who had been helped by the foundation, therapists who had been trained, doctors who had learned to combine traditional methods with modern science, all there because of an unlikely friendship that had started with an impossible promise. Sometimes I still can't believe it, Nathan admitted. Everything that happened, how it all connected perfectly. It wasn't perfect, Jayden said. It was hard. It was painful. There were moments we almost gave up. But we didn't give up. We didn't give up. And look where we've come, and where they had arrived was truly incredible. It wasn't just professional success or public recognition. It was something much bigger. It was the certainty that their lives had meaning, that they had made a real difference in the world, that the suffering they had gone through hadn't been in vain. As the night went on, people approached Jayden and Nathan to share their stories. A mother whose son had cerebral palsy and was walking thanks to the foundation's methods. A young man who had lost movement after an accident and recovered thanks to the work of a therapist trained by Jayden. A grandmother who had chronic pain for years and finally found relief with integrative treatments. Each story was unique. Each story was special. But they all had something in common. They were stories of hope, stories of not giving up, stories of believing in the impossible. "You too changed my life," a woman said, holding both their hands. "My daughter was going to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. The doctors had given up. But your foundation connected me with an amazing therapist who used Mrs. Wilmer's techniques. Today my daughter is in college, walking, living a normal life. I'll never be able to thank you enough." Nathan and Jayden were moved. No matter how many stories like this they heard, they always moved them. They always reminded them why they did what they did. When the party ended, it was past midnight. The park was empty, except for the two friends and their respective families. Nathan's children were running around the playground, just like other children had run years ago while he was stuck in his wheelchair watching. "Daddy," Nathan's oldest daughter, a 6-year-old girl, called. "Come play with us." Nathan looked at Jayden. "Go ahead," Jayden encouraged. "Enjoy it. Every moment counts." Nathan ran after his daughter, laughing, jumping, doing everything he once thought he'd never do again. And as he ran, for a moment he allowed himself to remember. Remember the pain, the fear, the uncertainty, but also remember the hope, the perseverance, the friendship that had changed everything. Uncle Jayden, Nathan's youngest son, a 4-year-old boy, tugged Jayden's hand. "Is it true that you made my dad walk again?" Jayden knelt to be at the boy's level. "Your dad made himself walk again. I just helped a little." "Daddy says you're a hero." Jayden smiled. "Your dad is the hero. He fought hard to walk again. He didn't give up even on the hardest days." "But you helped, right?" "Yes, I helped. Because that's what friends do. They help each other." The boy thought for a moment. "Then when I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to help people too." "You'll be better than me," Jayden said, ruffling the boy's hair, "because you'll learn from the mistakes I made and do everything even better." As the years kept passing, Nathan and Jayden's story became almost legendary. It was told in medical schools, in physical therapy courses, in meetings about integrative health. It wasn't seen just as a story of medical recovery, but as an example of the power of collaboration, open-mindedness, and human compassion. Many tried to replicate the Two Worlds Foundation model in other places, in other countries, some with success, others not so much. But everyone recognized that the difference wasn't just the methods used, it was the spirit behind them. It was the genuine desire to help, to make a difference, to not give up on people. Jayden wrote several books throughout his career, always documenting Mrs. Wilmer's techniques, always giving credit to her and her lineage of knowledge. But more important than the books, he personally trained dozens of doctors and therapists every year, ensuring the legacy wouldn't be lost. Nathan, in turn, took the foundation to levels no one imagined possible. He secured partnerships with large companies, with universities, even with government agencies. The foundation became a national reference in integrative treatments, proving with data and results that the combination of traditional and modern methods worked. But despite all the success and recognition, the two never forgot where they came from. They never forgot that day in the park, that first meeting that had changed everything. Every year, on the anniversary of the day they met, they made a point of spending the afternoon in that park, sometimes alone, sometimes with their families, but they always returned to the place where it all began. "Can you imagine," Nathan said during one of these annual visits, "if I'd stayed home that day? If my mother hadn't insisted on taking me to the park? But you came, and I was here. It was how it was meant to be. Do you believe that? That things happen as they're meant to?" Jayden thought for a moment. "I don't know if I believe everything is predetermined, but I believe that sometimes things align in a special way, and when that happens, we need to have the courage to seize the opportunity, to do what needs to be done. And if I hadn't had the courage, what if I had sent you away? But you didn't. You gave me a chance, and I gave my all to deserve that chance." That was what defined their relationship. It wasn't just friendship, although they were best friends. It wasn't just gratitude, although there was a lot of gratitude involved. It was a deep bond based on mutual respect, admiration, and everything they had been through together. When Jayden got married, it was Nathan who stood by his side as his best man. And when Nathan renewed his vows with his wife in a special ceremony to celebrate 15 years of marriage, it was Jayden who gave the most moving speech of the evening. "I met Nathan when he was at the lowest point in his life," Jayden said in that speech, "when he had lost hope and saw no future for himself. And today I'm here seeing this incredible man, with a beautiful family, making a difference in the lives of thousands of people. And I feel honored to have been part of his journey, to have been there when he needed it. Because in the end, that's what matters in life, being present for the people we love, not giving up on them, believing in them even when they can't believe in themselves." There wasn't a dry eye in the room when he finished. Life continued its natural flow. There were challenges, of course. The foundation faced funding difficulties sometimes. Jayden encountered resistance from colleagues who didn't accept his unconventional methods. Nathan had to deal with the responsibilities of managing a large and complex organization, but through it all, they had each other. When one was facing difficulties, the other was there to support. When one doubted himself, the other was there to remind him of everything they had achieved together. "Sometimes I feel tired," Nathan admitted in a conversation years later. "I feel like I'm carrying too much weight, too many responsibilities." "Then share the weight," Jayden replied. "That's what I'm here for. That's what your family is here for. You don't have to carry everything alone. But I feel like I have to. I feel like I owe it to all the people the foundation helps." "You don't owe anyone anything, Nathan. You've already done more than most people would do in 10 lifetimes. If you need to rest, rest. If you need to take a step back, do it. The foundation won't collapse without you for a while." It was this kind of honesty, this genuine care that defined their friendship. It wasn't just about celebrating successes. It was about being there during the tough times too. It was about being truthful, being real, being human. And it was exactly this humanity that made all the difference. Because in the end, what had saved Nathan hadn't just been the massage techniques or the exercises. It had been the human connection. It had been knowing that someone cared enough not to give up on him. And that was what they tried to pass forward through the foundation, through Jayden's work, through everything they did. That medicine wasn't just about techniques and procedures. It was about connection. It was about care. It was about seeing the whole person, not just the illness or the injury. When both turned 40, they had a big celebration. 40 years of life, almost 30 of friendship, decades of working together, making a difference in the world. There was a lot to celebrate. "We're not so young anymore," Nathan joked during the party. "Speak for yourself," Jayden retorted. "I still feel like I'm 20. "Liar. I saw you groaning when you got up from the chair the other day. That's because I carried your son on my back for 2 hours. That boy is getting heavy." They laughed, that easy laugh of people who've known each other so long they no longer need to pretend or worry about impressions. "But seriously," Nathan said later, "have you ever stopped to think about everything we've done? about how many lives we've changed. Sometimes, but I try not to think too much about it because I get emotional. Me too. I look at my children, at this life I have, and think that none of this would exist if it weren't for you. I wouldn't exist, at least not in this way. You would exist. It would just be different. But I understand what you mean, and I feel the same. My life would be completely different if I hadn't met you. Better or worse? Different. I don't know if better or worse, but I know I wouldn't change a thing. Because this, he gestured around, indicating the party, the people, everything they had built. This is real, this matters, this makes a difference. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of the story. Did it move you? Do you believe Nathan made the right decision by giving Jaden a chance? Leave your sincere words about this journey of friendship and overcoming in the comments. Where are you watching from? If you have a similar story or know someone who went through something similar, share it with us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.